What if I told you that Papua New Guinea's economy today is 20% smaller than it should have been? Imagine one-fifth of our nation's potential growth gone. That's not a rumor. That's not political spin. That is the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, telling us directly. But here's the real question. What does a 20% smaller economy actually mean for the people? For your future? And for the destiny of our country? The IMF has dropped a bombshell. PNG's economy is 20% smaller than it would have been if it had simply continued on its pre-COVID, pre-2019 growth path. Former Prime Minister Peter O'Neill quickly seized on this, claiming the IMF's own words indirectly vindicate his leadership. He points out that under his government, PNG's GDP tripled from 30 billion kina in 2011 to 85 billion kina in 2019 when James Marape took over. He also reminds us that during his time, gold prices averaged around $1,250 per ounce, far lower than the $2,500 per ounce average during Marape's government. Yet, according to O'Neill, despite higher commodity prices, the current government has failed to translate economic conditions into real improvements for the people. The opposition accuses the government of mismanaging the economy, while the Marape administration maintains it inherited structural problems and global shocks. But politics aside, what's clear is this. Ordinary Papua New Guineans are still struggling. Rampant crime, rising corruption, weak currency, a cost of living crisis, a shortage of medicine, and a drought in jobs. Let's slow down and break this apart. A 20% smaller economy may sound abstract, but let's put it in perspective. Imagine earning 100 kina a week. Suddenly, without doing anything wrong, you only earn 80 kina. That's the kind of impact we're talking about. Less money for families, less funding for schools and hospitals, less opportunity for jobs. The IMF isn't saying PNG is doomed. What they are saying is that, compared to where we could have been, we are lagging behind. The lost growth is an opportunity cost. It's the development, the stability, the progress that could have happened but didn't. Peter O'Neill points to his record. GDP tripled during his tenure. That is true, but GDP is not the whole picture. A rising GDP can hide inequality. It can hide whether people actually feel better in their daily lives. And James Marape's government, despite enjoying historically high gold prices, has not managed to convert that wealth into prosperity for the average citizen. So what do we see? A pattern. Wealth rising on paper, while ordinary people remain stuck. Commodity prices up, but poverty persists. A bigger GDP, but weaker kina. This is not just an economic failure. It is a leadership failure. We're about to look at how this 20% loss actually affects families, jobs, and everyday lives. You don't want to miss this. Let's take a real-life example. In the markets of Port Moresby or Lae, vendors sell their cacao, their bananas, their fish. Prices are rising, but their incomes are not. A mother walks away with only half the food she used to buy because her kina buys less. A young graduate holding his degree with pride sends out application after application. But there are no jobs. A clinic in a rural district runs out of basic antibiotics, leaving families desperate. Now compare this to what's happening at the top. Billions in GDP growth, billions from gold exports. Yet somewhere along the way, the chain is broken. The wealth is not trickling down. This is why the IMF's words sting so deeply. Do you believe PNG's economy would truly be 20% bigger today if O'Neill's policies had continued? Or do you think this is simply political point scoring? Can we rely on high commodity prices alone? Or is leadership the real missing ingredient? And here's the most important question. What kind of economy do we, as Papua New Guineans, want to build? One that looks good on paper? Or one that puts food on the table, medicine in hospitals, and jobs in the hands of our young people? Here's my perspective. Numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the full truth either. A growing GDP is important, yes. But a growing GDP that doesn't change lives is like a tree that grows taller, but never bears fruit. O'Neill is right that the GDP grew during his leadership. Marape is right that the world has faced crises beyond our control. But both miss the deeper point. People are not statistics. If a government cannot translate wealth into well-being, then we must question what that wealth is worth. That is why accountability matters. Not just pointing fingers, but asking, what has been done with the blessings this country has been given? The economy of Papua New Guinea can rise again if leaders stop chasing numbers and start serving people.